following tone. Yeah. The following tone. You ready? The following tone is a reference tone. Better be ready. Recorded at our operating level. And watch this tone. You know why? The world war started. Now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market. You don't wanna be our next target. The world war started. Now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market. You don't wanna be our next target. Yo, you don't want us to start riots. I'm doing shell on my head. I'm staying quiet, watching rappers perform at award shows. Ass crack exposed, wearing tight clothes like the baggy, asking me to buy your records when hip hop started in the Bronx. So they was rapping about robbing for rings and gold necklaces. Now they rapping capris on the patent leather dresses from the hood to Hollywood. The crossover methods. You lying to yourself, saying you can rhyme, telling lies, saying your rhymes better than mine. Like a king's off the bench, my poetry is Prince. When it's world war rap against the radio hits, hip hop is trap. We got you under attack. We take it back to the basics. You represent the fake shit. What I gotta name names for? MC, sound alike, see the light. I declare war. The world war started. Now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. All the rappers on the market. You don't wanna be our next target. The world war started. Now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. All the rappers on the market. You don't wanna be our next target.
There's a war going on outside, no man is safe, especially a fake one. Fucking with a great one. Old MC, Queens, pop for the rage, shocking the maze, inspire the world when I'm on stage. Fire one round and clown and dumb down. Headshot, dumbfound, married to the game out of wedlock. Sloppy slow jam for programmed directives. Need to be chiseled with stone like bedrock. Yo, relevance is ghetto intelligence. The voice of the people will always take precedence. Corporate backers behind these candy rappers is competitors. Got us selling their soul in these settlements. Off with your head like severance, pay me. Everything remains low with this concrete baby. Prince Code, hostile, letting up from the front line. Whack back cannibals, motherfucker, it's lunchtime. The world war started, now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market, you don't wanna be our next target. The world war started, now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market, you don't wanna be our next target. Set it off, set the record straight. Cut the cake, break bread with the real. Gotta hate for the fake. With the video, gives it cutting the cake. They all pay for it. In the car, you rapping in ain't yours. While the real MCs is overseas on tour. The Generation X got a record deal with the devil. Dumb down your verse, but I'm not watered down, so I'm dying to thirst behind the heavy metal. In the project, section 8, part of the ghetto. Frontin' on World Star with your EBT card. I'm a security guard pulling out, looking shot, joking, figure what the fuck happened to hip hop. For the CPR, get your cars recharged in the Johnson for the rap retards. Put my future counterparts till my album drops. We some charge man up, rap war, soldier march. The world war started, now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market, you don't wanna be our next target. The world war started, now the world's cold-hearted, and everything on the radio is garbage. Old rappers on the market, you don't wanna be our next target. World war rap.
Finish.
Oh, and good evening. And that was World War Rap by Tonight Man. Guess. So I wonder, before we go any further, how are we doing tonight, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you, fam?
Well, we were just talking before we went live, man, and I kind of like many of these shows, we kind of the best conversations go on pre and post podcast, man. But well, let's just kick off where we were before. Let's have a quick introduction. So before we go any further, just maybe give us a brief overview of well, you were kind of telling me beforehand, your brief history. So kind of give me a quick roadmap about how you got from where you were in the 80s to where you are now, dude.
I wasn't really. I was just a fan of the 80s. I'm a sort of like more of a 90s kid, to be honest with you. I got into hip hop around about 88. I was young then. Hopefully I don't look older than I actually am. But the fact is that I got into hip hop late 80s when it was very politicized, like we were talking about earlier. And obviously we had the likes of Public Enemy, KRS-One, Boogie Down Productions at the time, just X-Clan, all that kind of stuff. And even the likes of, I was really into native tongues such as De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Money Love, Queen Latifah, Black Sheep, and it was like basically like a stream of Black consciousness. So it was like so it was all preaching, like Public Enemy were all preaching a message. There was a message in everything. Up until the sort of early 90s, where you started getting the gangster rap coming in, that's when it all fell apart. And people say that that's when hip hop started, like, as it really was, started unfolding a bit. But I would put the golden era, we call it a golden era, quote unquote. Not that I realized I was living through it at the time, because I could just go into, I don't know if our American friends are familiar with the HMV. I think they are. Used to go to HMV and just buy everything they import and just like everything, even stuff like I wasn't familiar with, like Outkast's first album, which I'm not even going to mention because it's like Southern Cal. It's like, it's really long, and I can't even bother to mention it because I'll mess it up. Southern Cadillac play our music, something like that. But yeah, the fact is that I liked everything that I bought back then. Everything had a message up until around about 95, 96. And then something took a turn for the worse, and it became very much, it became very big videos. And I reckon, I would say that around about 96, it became about Hype Williams videos, 96, 97, fisheye lens, everyone dancing in shiny suits, the Jiggy era, when everyone's talking about money, P. Diddy and Mason, all that. That's when the line started becoming blurred between even the mainstream hip hop in the early 90s, or early to mid 90s, was like Nas, Tupac, Biggie, Jay-Z, all legendary figures, music who made really good music. And then it became like Nelly, you know. So it really took a plunge after, I would say, about 97 onwards. It took a dive terribly. So I would say, yeah, I represent music that's sort of like, and the music that I make very evidently is influenced by your late 80s, your early 90s, up to your mid 90s, really. Yeah, with a message on top. Yeah.
Well, do you know what I found?
Sorry.
Go on. No, go ahead.
Because I used to be an MC back in the day, and I also had like a message when I was generally doing things. I used to like to battle rap a lot though as well. So I was just young. So I thought I was better than everybody else, but then you realize that you're not. So I just very naturally progressed into production, and people subsequently, who I've worked with, have all had something to say. And if they don't have anything to say, like we talked about earlier, it makes my mind melt, because I do have, I've got 3 degrees. I've got a degree, master's degree, and a doctorate, and I can't deal with someone slurring around on some, talking about like popping mollies, or taking ecstasy as we know it, and popping champagne corks and popping guns. So I can't relate to any of that. So I can relate to popping champagne, but I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it in a rap. I want to hear about, like we said, we live in very troubled times. We live in times where Trump's now the president. He's now the number one figure in global politics, or the most powerful figure in the world, which is extremely disconcerting. We live post Brexit. We live in increasingly right wing and troublesome times. So it's not representative to be talking about what you do in the club, or how fat someone's ass is, how fat some girl's ass is, or just how much drugs you've taken, because it's not representative of 95% of the people's lives. And the stuff that they do, like you heard in World War Rap, what Hastile was saying is that most of the stuff is like rented anyway. Cars are rented for the videos. They get these models in. They rent out a house. It's all fake. It's all smoke and mirrors. So, like we were talking about before, where we come from, the era of Paris and Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions. Yeah. I need a message to go with the music, which I think Kendrick Lamar is particularly in his last album delivered to yeah, he really has. I would say Kendrick's the only rapper that I rate who's came out in the last sort of 10 years. Really.
Well, do you know what's sort of fascinating? I kind of want to linger on the 2 points before we stray too far away from it. I mean, you kind of skipped over it, and maybe give more reflection, because I think it's something you sort of skipped over, and it's worth sort of like lingering on. It's a very fact of, here we are, man. I'm from the UK. You're from the UK, and you sort of like to sort of say we were into sort of like listening to Paris and Public Enemy in the 80s. It's not. It's kind of like that's maybe needs a bit more this sort of opening up, because it wasn't. I mean, I'll tell you I kind of honestly got into the whole of. I grew up being a real metal boy, so I was into all that side of it, and then there was that early crossover with the Anthrax when they started doing the Rum DMC. And I'll tell you what it was. Someone gave me around about the same time. It was kind of like the late 80s and stuff like that. And I started hearing some sort of Public Enemy, and then I kind of left it alone. And then someone gave me probably about 92, just as it was released, Sleeping with the Enemy by Paris. And we just went to his house in Luton. We rammed it up full rack in his little flat and just whammed it through. And like I say, you can't really overlook how much the experience of that was at the time, because it wasn't kind of like now where rap music was even liked at the time. So to hear this kind of stuff and hearing, let's be truthful, I was a pasty white boy listening to this stuff. It was very kind of, it was, but I think the reason I wanted to mention this, because do you know what I find, getting to the point I am in my journey in life, is that it surprises me that nothing has changed. I mean, all the things you just talked about and what you were just saying, I mean, Paris, those guys were singing about that back in the day, and it kind of like, here we are 30 odd years later, and it's kind of like they seem as relevant as they did back then, but equally they were ignored then, and they've been ignored for the last 30 years. And that in some parts has always drawn my heart a bit, like, how come these guys have been ignored and all these other guys? And that was sort of sad, because these guys were talking about it back in the day. I mean, you were just mentioning it, well rap. I was saying to you before we went live that it reminded me a lot of the Paris stuff, because you had the beat and the feel, and particularly that, like you were just saying about, I don't know what happened, because maybe I will have to hear your reflection on this. I thought personally when grunge came around, I thought, here we go, we're gonna have this whole movement and change, but it all fizzled out. And like you say, then rap sold itself out, rock sold itself out, and music just went dead. And I'd argue to this day it hasn't recovered from it. It's just been we've been in a tepid state since. But I don't know what it was, because up to that point there was some really radical shit going on, and people were really talking about stuff. And then for some reason, now I think it was grunge, and then we get into the whole, what was grunge just a ploy just to make that happen, because suddenly we got every white boy walking around trying to think they're a rebel. Then they woke up, smelled the coffee, finished their degrees, and 5 years later they're voting Tony Blair and going into Iraq, and you're thinking, hey, what happened?
There's some truth in that. Yeah. So what was the question?
My question to you really was like, how did you really kind of get into it? Because like I said, the reflection was I kind of got into it through the metal sort of scene. I mean, again, trying to make it wasn't a kind of a big scene in the late when you were mentioning it wasn't like you go everywhere and it was being played a bit more. I've always you would know.
No.
I would argue that hip hop has got 30 years than it ever was back then. It was more of an underground thing then. So I'm fascinated to know how you got into it.
Yeah. Oh boy. Literally when I got into it, late 80s, there was no hip hop publications. Hip Hop Connection came out just after. There was nothing, there was no nationwide. You remember when Tim Westwood used to do his radio show? Mm-hmm. He didn't actually have a nationwide, UK-wide radio show until 1994, which is years after. And I remember hearing his first show. And so there was no national hip hop show where I come from. I come from the Northeast. There was no local radio stations. There was. I did a pirate radio station when I was 14. That was quickly shut down. But there was nobody playing hip hop. at all, really. So I just got randomly stung by the bug when I was listening to Pete Tong daytime. I just remember it was like, God, about 88, and he played God, I remember talking about this in junior school or elementary school to our American friends, and De La Soul, and he played De La Soul, played Jungle Brothers, and he played like Money Love, and I remember I just fell in love with it from that point on, and it's stuck with me ever since. I've never wavered. So when my friends around, like, who lived in the area I got them into hip hop in sort of like the early 90s and stuff, and they were all playing a Public Enemy, they were all playing Tupac and stuff, and then all of a sudden when Oasis and Blur became famous in the mid-90s, they all dropped that, and at every house party I used to go to, it was Oasis, and then because of virtue of Oasis liking Beatles, everybody started listening to the Beatles. So I was like, oh Christ, like, and I've actually grown to love the Beatles a lot more in later life, you know, not that late in life, I'm not that old, but you know, as an older guy than I was then, because I was only a stupid teenager. But yeah, like, so I appreciate the artistry and things like Sgt. Pepper. I mean, it's an amazing album, things like that. But at the time, I was like, turn the shit off and put the hip hop on, and I was like, everyone had switched allegiances from me getting them into hip hop into being into Brit pop, as you remember. That was short-lived. That was short-lived as well, just like grunge, short-lived. I mean, so basically, when you were talking earlier on, it reminded me of like when music started consuming itself, and it's like the disco era in the late 70s, when even black radio wouldn't play the likes of James Brown, wouldn't play the like Harlem and Funkadelic, wouldn't play anything remotely what you could call edgy. And so they started playing disco. When disco came, and people used to walk around in New York with like t-shirts saying disco sucks, and they're playing Donna Summer and all this kind of stuff. And so what happened is that birthed hip hop, because they cut the fund into schools in New York, and then they had block parties, and as we all know, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, DJ Kool Herc hosted just a party for a sister, and that became the first ever hip hop party. 1970, God, don't kill me, everybody. 4. That was in 73. God Almighty, Lord have mercy. It's getting late. I think it was 74, and yeah. So the thing is, because black music wasn't being played on radio, they started playing James Brown. And then that became, then they heard that there was a nice, that the people were reacting more to the segment where there was no music, which is, we now know it's called the break. So that's why it's called the breaks. Like, you know, you play the breaks on one turntable and then play it on the other turntable to keep the continuous loop going. And so from that loop spawned hip hop. So yeah, so basically when you mentioned about like music becoming, like overblown, and it's almost like every time music becomes really overblown, it has like it's sort of like there's something else that comes through. So like when disco became this huge overblown monstrosity, hip hop sort of developed. Then when you had in the UK, when you had it was like progressive rock, prog rock, and it was like rock that, like you said, had been bastardized, and it was really clever, and everyone thought they were great, and you know, basically people who could play 12 bars on a guitar, created punk, and punk came out of nowhere. It was like basically like hip hop, pick up the music and run with it, sort of thing. And I actually mentioned this about my pieces. There's a lot of similarities between blues. There's a lot of similarities between hip hop. There's a lot of similarities between punk, even. Punk, because punk was DIY music, like hip hop was DIY music, and like blues was DIY music, and obviously then since then, yeah, it's every time things became very overblown, there seems to be like an upsurgence in an indie sort of based thing where it becomes the fashion for a bit, and then But hip hop is the only one that's actually lasted. The rest, obviously, punk died out. Really, like you said, grunge died out as well. But hip hop's the only one I think of, the only sort of originally subculture that's lasted the test of time. However, it is now in a very convoluted. The mainstream is, like, I would say, two different. It's like it's a different, not even a different industry. It's a different way of life. They preach a different gospel. It's like the underground still make that countercultural music, whereas a large part, anyway, I can't say everybody does. So I've been sent some terrible music. I get sent terrible music regularly, and they're still preaching. They're people who are starry-eyed little kids who think that blowing up still occurs. But when you have an industry, and this is a slightly different topic, when you have an industry which has no money in it, and nearly when streaming has increased by 57% last year, and album sales went down 25% by album downloads. So you're effectively subscribing to a culture where it's been propped up by streaming, which accounts for nearly half of the entire music industry. And if you're an independent music artist, you get paid a fraction of a cent per play, when we used to get like nearly $10 for one album. But now people can pay $10 for a month subscription to Spotify. So we get peanuts. So when people say, "Oh, we want to blow up," blow up to what? What, get signed by some, if you're lucky, big record deal, and then sign your soul away and they own everything about you? Or continue with the indie hustle and make no money? Because everyone used to say, well, at least you earn a lot more money in the independent industry. But not anymore, you don't. So it's like, yeah. So it's a lot of people also, I've seen on social media, have got it sort of twisted between a hobby and a profession. So the amount of times I've heard people say they're an aspiring rapper, or this, that, and the other, that just means people are doing it in their bedrooms. And when they approach me, and I'm like, cool. Okay, good to hear from you. Do you have a budget? Well, what do you mean budget? Like a monetary transaction? Because to be honest with you, I don't blow my own trumpet, but unless it was somebody who I would work with, who's going to further my career, what's the point? Like unless it was someone the prerequisite would be they're amazing, and they blow me away lyrically, which is very, very seldom. Or B, they're someone who I know, like Paris. I don't know him personally, but know his music. Or Chuck D, who I do know personally, whose music is just absolutely amazing, and they're legends. Who would also, by their legendary status, it would almost like be vindication of my status. So Chuck D said some really like cool things about me, myself. I'd be caught up in a tangent here, but there's so many things that swirl around my head about this music thing every day. And it's changed so much, even the last 5 years. It's so, the message has been diminished, the music's been diminished, and I think people's ethics have been diminished when people are selling beats like for $5 each. $5 for a beat. I mean, so
yeah,
it's sad. It's sad. Yeah. It's sad what's happening to hip hop. So I say it's only countercultural music that's lasted, but it's lasted in a way that I think I don't recognize this from like 20 years ago. I don't recognize that it's still hip hop, but it's almost like when people are singing more than are rapping in the mainstream, then and then there's no music in the independent scene. Then I don't know. Has it lasted, or has it died a death like everything else eventually? But it just had a run.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think it has to be said. I think one of the things that links the blues to rap,
yes,
to any real form of creation is, like you spoke upon, it's the element of being real and reflecting is, and that's like I said before, that could be reflecting it, and that's, I tell you what, it's a dichotomy of the times we live in. We're old enough to be down the path, and back in the day, it was you know, let alone the people you could speak to, Chuck D and stuff, you know, they would have died for the tools we've got in our hands. I mean, the ability, you know what I mean? But yet, we've had this dichotomy. We've got all the tools in our hands, but like you say, we've lost it. And equally, nobody wants. I mean, this is what I'm saying. In the time, I mentioned before, but you've always had people singing about truthful things, and like you say, and they're the ones. To me, that's why. Why is Chuck D remembered and MC Hammer's not?
Mm-hmm.
That's because he was real and he carried a legacy. He didn't think about the now. He thought about, okay, let's just be real, and I don't, you know, and I'll just do step by step, and then I'll look back in maybe 10 years time, and I'll be remembered with some status and honor because of what I did through, and I've as compared to everyone else. But the thing that fascinates me is in the times that we live in, particularly right now, and nothing seems to have changed. You know, like you were speaking upon it. Everywhere is just it's focused on this idea of, like you said, jumping into to be a star. Like you said, A, selling your soul, and B, kind of like, even when you think about it, I always say to anybody that comes along with that attitude is like, well, there's two things, and like I said, it links the blues and it links rap and it links everything in life when you're creative. You've got to learn to put the hours in. That 15,000 hours, you know, you've done it. To learn any subject, philosophy, you've got to put some hours in, dude, and that's been lost in our culture because it's been lost in this whole X Factor world of shiny, get, you know, show your body off, and that's one thing. But equally, I think as much as that's got to be shined upon, I think equally people need to be, I don't know, man. And you've got to remember, this is especially the times we live in. And I think it's why it's imperative that these conversations go on, because I can understand why everybody maybe doesn't want to come out and be real, as much as they may really feel it in their heart, because we live in times, man, and this is opens up to a wider conversation. But people are afraid to say stuff, man, because they're afraid of being shouted down and screamed at, and we live in these times, man, and that's not refreshing, because to advance, we need to speak to each other as a species, because all the time we're talking, we're not getting guns out, and that's step number one. And that's why I feel in this age of, like we were saying, in the age when we've got all the tools, all the freedom, yet as human species we've enclosed ourselves and become shut down and afraid. And to break through that, we need these kind of conversations, and you making what you're doing to show people, hey, it's okay, man. It's okay. I'm not doing this for money. I'm just doing it because it needs to be said. And this is what I feel as a human being right now in 2016, come 2017. That's my creative experience. And that needs to be really shone upon, man.
Yeah. I've noticed one thing, which is even a greater dichotomy, is the phrase social media. Now, when you there's nothing social about social media, because we're all looking at a screen, not even interacting person to person. I mean, we're not even interacting like me and you are interacting now. It's even less than that. It's words on the screen. So it's really cool to meet people like you. But it's like I've noticed, like, people take words out of context. People almost like shoot you down for having a view about politics, or so, like you say, it's almost like this thin line that you've got to tread between saying the perceived right and wrong things. And it's like because you get these things like trolls, whatever they're called now, follow you around and stuff if you say the wrong things, and then you just got to block all of them. It's weird. It only happened to me like recently, and they've got like 1 million different accounts each. So it's like, it's like we're meant to have all this grit free. We've got all these tools, like you said. We've got like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But they're all owned, apart from Twitter, they're all owned by even what we're speaking now, my friend, obviously. And they're all owned by major corporations. So there is freedom of speech to an extent, but I do think that, and I know you've got a few tricks up your sleeve to enhance that freedom of speech, where it's not designated by a giant corporation, which I fully support. And I love anyone who starts things, you like a startup, and I think you're going to go far with that. I won't talk too much about it, because I know. No,
feel free, because this is one of the things I think needs to be spoken upon, man. And
what we need.
Funny enough, someone today was actually asking me about this, and I said the whole point, and I think what's really imperative to get spoken out there with anything that anyone needs to do is just that first step. And that's why I love talking to people like yourself, because we need people to inspire people. Because like what I'm building, dude, I'm no coder, But my point is, and this is what we're speaking upon. This was an idea that should have happened 20 years ago. And it's a simple thing. But I've just been waiting 30 years for technology, and now technology is coming there. But this is what's needed. But for this stuff to happen, this is why I'm really rooted in this concept of, for anything to really work, like a reflection of nature itself, it doesn't need to come from the top and be centered. It needs to come from the bottom and be organic, and human to human. None of this ideology shit. None of this, isms, this, isms, that. We don't need that. We all need to come together as a species and go, hey, I'm a human, you're a human. Can we just move on as human beings? And that's
color at the door. Leave the geographical differences at the door, because sorry to interrupt you there, but all I read on YouTube is just arguments about black and white and UK and US, and like you said, leave it at the door. We're humans, and we have 99.9% things in common, so genetically. So yeah, sorry.
Exactly. No, but what I'm trying to say is, I think I think this is one of the things I learned from things like hip hop, particularly, and it was just another lesson I learned in life, is that, and I think it speaks upon what you're trying to say about with N99, is that for me personally, from the side I am, I think, like I was just trying to speak upon, we need everybody to reach out and do this. I don't want. I've always said N99 is just a tool that I'm building because it's a tool that I would use. It's nothing to do with me. My dream is I get it out and it's done, and I can just leave it alone, and it can be used. But we need, like any great thing, we need, like in music, in art, we need to start connecting people. And I think the difficulty is, my friend, and you probably know this because you've been down the rabbit hole a few years. I think trying to get creative people together in a room or wherever on a common project is like herding cats. It's almost an impossible task.
I would definitely co-sign with that. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Which is frustrating, because I was going to throw you to the question, because I've often thought, if we could only get I've put it this way, if I could get 10% of the people I've been on this podcast together, we could shake the world. But how do we do it, my friend? I'll ask you. I'll throw this question down to you. What are the steps?
This is something that I've pondered myself. I roll with a group of people on social media, and we're called the Configa Army. And it's just because my name fits, and I'm the conduit that everyone knows everybody else. But they're a group of creative individuals, and we've all got the same mind frame that we need cohesion. We need to come together as opposed to confusion. And like number 99 takes that to another level. Like you said, you've interviewed. I just researched a lot of your interviews today, and I was like, oh my god, like you've been doing this like over 200 interviews. You've done a phenomenal amount of interviews. But yes, like you said, try and get those people, those creatives who all have something to say together. Like you said, it's like herding cats, and I don't know if it's ego, which needs to be left at the door. I don't know if it's because ego and pride seem to come before a fall. But I don't think we can afford to have ego and pride when they're sucking, like, basically we're even being manipulated into what we talk about with trending topics on Twitter. We're being manipulated constantly. We're manipulated on Facebook by targeted adverts. We're being manipulated even on a social media forum. So with your idea, it's from grassroots on up, and I really hope people subscribe to it, because it's what we need. I've always talked about having a collective, having a community, and it's all about having a community. But the hardest thing about community is it's like a thing, isn't it, about communism? It's like, when everyone wants to be the same, or make everyone the same, but it never works because nobody wants to be the same. So everyone's like wants to be better than someone else because human nature. So it's a good idea in Marxist theory, but it's a terrible idea when you're like, when you're the Soviet Union. It didn't work whatsoever. In fact, it was absolutely hideous. So when we talk about community, and when people talk loosely about the hip hop community or the underground independent hip hop community, I don't think of what community. We don't go to. You might be, even people that are in the local areas We don't go to meetings. You know, we might bump into each other at gigs or something, but we don't like. There's no cohesion. There's no grassroots movement, and we're just like aimlessly muddling along and getting dictated to. You know what the radio plays, what the major executives tell them to play, the same 5 songs repeatedly, and in the UK as well as the US, because I was lived there for 3 months this year, and it's just awful. So we need, it's a lot, it's all this, and like you said earlier, one of the biggest nemesis, one of the biggest nemesis to, I think, collective unity is ego, and also the fact that everyone wants to be heard. So what we get now in social media is everyone shouting on top of everybody else. Like you said, the tools were given, but the tools are, unfortunately, anyone can use them. There's quality control. So like someone like me has to like fight amongst all these people who are like making their music in their bedroom and they're doing their first song. When I did my first songs, they were on tape, and it was sold primarily to friends who lived in the local area when I was young. So you earn your stripes. I posted about it the other day. There was a 12-year-old producer. I can't remember his name. It's not important to me, but he was 12 years old, and he said he was like a producer and an entrepreneur. And I'm thinking, you're 12 years old. You should be out playing with your friends, number one. And number two, I think it's 13 years old before you're even allowed in social media. And he had like a following of like 4,000. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, even if you're a child genius, go and be a child genius behind closed doors, and then present yourself at a later stage when you've at least got your training wheels. Like, I wouldn't. It's this whole thing about everyone wants to be like. It's the same as TV. Everyone wants to be famous, as opposed to, I'll go back to Chuck D. He was 27 years old, which is not old by any stretch of the imagination, but it's old. It was old in the 80s. Because everyone was really young in the 80s. Everyone was in their teens or early 20s. Him and Flavor Flav like in the late 20s, and were told they were too old. But you know, their music sport, because I think because he's a 60s baby, he came from demonstrations and cultural awareness and just the human rights, you know, for black people. So I think that's why we had that really strong voice from Chuck D. If you'd been any younger, it wouldn't have been quite the same. So he talks about this very frequently, that he was born in 1960s, and so the whole of the 60s didn't just pop out of the thin air in the 80s. So I think yeah, I think we need more cohesion, less more political stances. I mean, how can people not be political when we've got this orange oaf who talks the most reckless stuff, even on Twitter? There was a meme or whatever you call it the other day, when it was like, oh, like, you know, great things said by Lincoln or like George Washington, and then Donald Trump was talking about how Robert Pattinson, I think his name is, dumped Kirsten Stewart, and like he's talking about like some celebrity dumping another celebrity. Like why are you not talking about like policies, or, you know, he's just an idiot, complete buffoon, and he's now the most powerful man in the world, and this is very unsettling, and hence why we're in turbulent times. And we need, I often use this hashtag, all we have is us. Like, literally, we don't have anything else, like, because Spotify's not looking out for us. Apple Music's not looking out for us. They don't pay anything. Not that it's all about the money, but it costs money to record in a studio. It costs money for a proper engineer to mix and master your stuff. It costs money for artwork, ordinarily. It costs money for videos, ordinarily. Otherwise, you just end up with like some stuff shot on your phone, which is very clearly shot on your phone. So luckily, I've got some hookups, and I don't spend a fortune, but the ends don't justify the means currently. And I see all these unfortunate lambs to the slaughter are putting out their music, and they don't realize how much the worm has really turned. They still think they can really make it, and make it. It's just right now. It's not even an ideology that really exists. What is making it?
Exactly.
Well, do you know what making it is these days? Do you know what making it? Like, what is making
No.
it?
And do you know, I think my friend, and I think this is what I mean, man. There's so much I would have sort of like focus on, but just to generally speak about what you just said, then I think what we're seeing, and I don't know if you feel the same thing, but I think what we're seeing around, particularly our part of the world in America, is we're we're in that moment as a species where we're about to break from the cocoon. It could go, and it could go either way. I'm not saying that somewhat. I mean, it's down to us as what we do as individuals to see how this goes. This all plays out. We could end up in World War III, or we could just break through and do it. But I think what you're seeing, my friend, and this is why I think it's imperative about what you just spoken upon is really highlighted and actually spoken upon more and more and more by more people, because we need to realize that the whole system's collapsed, dude. And the only way we're ever going to get, and that's, it's almost like I look at it like the analogy. It's like a dead dinosaur on the beach. It's not quite dead yet. It's still got that fire. It can still breathe, and it's still got but all the time we keep going up to it and prodding it and being fascinated by it, it's going to keep. We should just all walk away. And this is what I was saying about the tools. We have got the tools in our hands now. Hey, I mean, to be honest, I'll be real with you, man. I can't believe I sit here in 2016 and someone hasn't already done an N99. I can't believe it hasn't been done. That to me is like, okay, but then isn't it always true, my friend, that always falls down to people like me, you, Chuck D, Paris. It just falls down to and this is what I'm trying to say. We're never going to get anywhere if we always just stop and think, oh, someone else is going to give us something. Someone else. Yeah. It's not down to that. We're like you said, dude. We're born in this world alone. We're going to die in this world alone. And the quicker we all realize that and understand, we can all start to look after ourselves, and then we. And this is the thing. And this is the thing about this is, and this is why I think, you know, I love about what you're saying, and because I think it's this wake up moment that everyone's going to go through, is that this little thing we're talking about here maybe only really reflects a part of the world we're living in. Because you go to other parts. So I thought I lived down in South America for many years, and
right.
Okay, you see different reflections of stuff down there, but what you do realize, and you could say speak upon the same. You've been to America, like you were saying, people are people all over the world, man, and we're all okay. We may differ on a few little small things about football teams or this, or even bigger things about, you know, but equally, I mean. Let's be real. You take the most ardent Trump supporter and the most ardent whatever exit, you know, person. If you put them in a room, ultimately most of them are going to want freedom. Now, there's very few people either side that want to put people in cages, and we can, as a species, we can wheedle out those people. But it's just us as a species all being, because I tell you what it is, we all feel that we're out of control, and we feel because we're bombarded with news and corporations, and that's not the real truth is, and the real awakening is, this controls everything, dude.
Conscious.
And if we can get that across to people, that they don't need to rely on anybody or some, you know, some guy coming from the top and throwing them a few little buttons of gold and saying, look, dance me, monkey, dance me. You're like, those days are over, dude. We need to wake up and say, we've got them, like you said, we've got the power. We've got it inside our own heads. And we've got the power and the tools. And that's where we are, I think, at the moment. I think we can just... I think we are in that awakening moment, because I think people are, particularly that millennial generation, they're starting to become realize, hey, I'm not going to work like my old man. I'm not going to put a tie on. I'm not going to do the 9-to-5 shit. Yeah. I'm not waiting for a pension that's never going to come. I'm not going to rely on that government shit. I'm going to do it myself, man. And that's what I think is really, that's what I loved about hip hop. It was guys from the streets rising up and saying, hey, I'm not going to go and kiss ass to a record company. I'm doing it myself. And I think that's, as much as it was true then, it's more true now.
I would say yes. I mean, with that era and time, Reaganism equals Thatcherism in this country. They were best buddies, and Reagan wrecked. I mean, because of Reagan slashing funding to public as they say, we call them state schools. They're called public schools out in America. Because people couldn't learn instruments, they took a record back home and started messing around with the record, because the record, you know, it's cheaper, and from that spawned hip hop. So from it literally came out of nothing. So now we're in equally bleak times. Okay, we've weathered the storm I mean, like the recession. But the fact is that, I mean, have you seen the pound in comparison to the dollar recently? I mean, after this Brexit thing, things have got a lot more expensive for me buying from America, like a lot more expensive. So to be honest with you, I think what the point I'm trying to make is that in terms of adversity, such as when hip hop really did start making strides to make, like Paris and, like we said, Chuck D and all them. It was in the time of Reaganism over there, Thatcher here, and now we're equally in barren times with the conservative government here and Trump over there. And I think there may be a next generation uprising, because with all intents and purposes, I mean, I know some people don't agree with his policies, but Barack Obama is a great guy. You know, I don't want to rally against Obama. I think he did everything he could. He was just stopped by various different forces. But the fact is that Trump is a warlord and he's out of control. So I think politics frames everything that we do. But when people say I'm not interested in politics, it makes me very dubious, because that means they're not interested in how much things cost, or if they're going to get like what kind of education they're going to get for their children and this kind of thing. So politics frames absolutely everything that we do.
No.
And so by how bleak it is politically out there, like it was in the 80s, I think I would hope people come together and, like, under a banner such as you. Well, obviously, I don't want to talk too much, but such as you would provide, and say, yeah, we've got something to say, and we want to say it in this platform where there's no like pop-up adverts, and there's like, you know, there's no trolls, and just there needs to be an environment where everyone can say what they really think, and other people may or may not agree with that opinion, but they respect their opinion. There needs to be more respect as well. I talked about humility. I talked about being truthful to oneself, but there needs to be openness, honesty, and less pride. And I think when you've got that, and I think when people get real with themselves about the fact there is no making it anymore, that the music industry will consume you and you will just be like finding a needle in a haystack, I think then we can come together collectively as us on the grassroots level and come together and formulate something that will just be much bigger and could hopefully eventually rival what the major industry, because they're just doing as they please. They've got no competition, because there's millions of us, and unfortunately not millions of us are talking about politicized issues, but there's enough of us like that everyone like you talk to are articulate, intelligent, and make good music predominantly. And like you said, why can't they all come together? What's stopping them? What's the mitigating factor of stopping these otherwise good people coming together and forming a community?
My personal thoughts on that right now is because I think we strayed from I have a deep fascination with an old law system that was around the Gallic times called Brian law. And it was all based around decentralized communities and how they would move around. And one of the main focuses on that was that you could have the ability to move around in the tribe and do whatever if it was all about what you put in, the effort. If you were a harpist or a writer or whatever it was. And I think that's, for whatever reason, and I don't want to go down that whole rabbit hole of how that's happened, but I could argue it's happened for beyond the day I was born. You can argue it goes back to the 50s. You can argue it goes right back. You can argue how far it all goes back, because you can argue it all started when they started to literally paper money. That's when it all went wrong, because it was enslavement to money. And we've never had the systems to get us out of money. And what I'm trying to focus, the great times we're living at now, and this is where I think we're seeing the reflection in everything, is that you know, I don't care if it's a bomber, whether you put up whoever it is. It's no man can control that many people. It's not. That's why you see these people age, dude. It's a system that was written by old dead people, and I think we're as a species starting to wake up to that, and we're starting to form our own systems and our own ways of doing things, and
we need.
and and that's what's essential, because instead of, this is what I love about the times we've got, because we've got the ability, and this is what's really going to happen in the next sort of, I don't know, however you want to stretch this time out. And I think we've talked maybe about some of the carrots about how we can get funded as musicians. One of the sticks we haven't spoken about in this whole conversation is, man, and again, it plays into what we're talking about, whether it's going to be 10 years, 20 years, whatever you want to put time period on, all the jobs going, all human jobs are going to be replaced by automation, all of them. Yeah, and you know what? I don't feel that bad about it, because, you know, I mean, as much as I hear people going, "Oh, yeah, I'm like, no, I don't want humans walking down coal pits. I don't want people walking down sewers. I want people to be creative, and that's where we need to. That's going to be the key element of where people like you, me, and other creative people step in, and we go, right, let's highlight these people, and let's say, so a parent can turn around to his 8-year-old kid and go, do you know what? Look, you can follow that path. It's not hard. You can follow that path, and you can follow your creativity in a world, and that's what's needed.
Yeah.
We don't need to bully people into things or push them into any areas. We just need to have the heroes be people like you instead of Beyonce.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, there's a policy of parents to want their children to do well, and that well is actually based on wealth. It's based on capitalism. It's based on, oh, I'm going to brag to my friends about how well little Johnny's doing in his job as a working in the financial district. Now, to be honest with you, what is he really contributing to outside of that? You know, yes, he's sustaining possibly his family, himself, but we need to start thinking. Yeah, we need to start thinking way out of the box now. This capitalism. We need money to survive, unfortunately, and it'll be. I mean, there was a time when Bitcoin was going to take over, and Bitcoin was going to be the revolutionary way and it may still be. I don't know, the revolutionary way to pay for things and stuff like that. But yeah, we need, like you said, parents to encourage their kids to be whoever you want to be. And because I know people who, I know a singer who was forced into like going to school and like doing her A levels. The Americans don't do that, but like and she always had a passion for music, and it was never indulged. And she had to sort of like leave home and move to Germany and got a recording contract in Germany, and then came back and started writing for some of the biggest artists out here in the commercial aspect of it all, and gets royalties every time, because if you get a writing credit, that's what the money is, writing the music. Let's not beat around the bush. But her parents were very down on her because they were very traditional people. Like, you've got to study, you've got to get a proper job, proper job. So you got to be like a doctor, a medical doctor of sorts, like, or you got to be an accountant, or you got to be this, that, and the other. So yeah, it's with me. I've got 2 daughters, and I would always encourage them to follow their dreams, and I would hope that people of my / our generation would do exactly the same, because we are creatives, and if you're creative, you want to inspire other creatives in the next generation below you, but also your own children. So if my eldest daughter or whatever turned around and said, I want to be a singer, I'll be like, go for it. Like, I would always suggest have a plan B, because I've done music like since forever, but I've always done other things. I've always worked, I've always studied. Hence why I've got a doctorate, because I always knew, you just can't put all your eggs in one basket. But I would still, the more creatives we foster and encourage, the better, because the creative industry is historically through governmental policy. I don't think I can swear in this program, can I?
No, mate. So go ahead, man.
It's shit on. Like, they don't invest in film. I know that for a fact. They don't properly invest in film in this country anyway. They don't invest in music. They don't, not to the level they should. And so yeah, the arts, in inverted commas, should be just seen as like, so to come back to it, because people don't value the arts the way they should. When you've got a raft of people who, if their toilet gets blocked, they would pay for a plumber. If their car breaks down, they pay for an engineer. But if they want some music, they expect it for free. It's like, it's a creative process. Like, someone's put a lot of time into it, and they just expect it for free. And you're an artist yourself, but you're artist as in you paint and draw. And yeah, like, people it's probably the same thing with that as well. To expect it for nothing, because it's an arty thing and it's not really important. Yes, it is. It's vitally important, because without art there'd be no culture, and culture is vital, absolutely vital. Without culture, what would we be? I mean, I've been watching this weird program on Amazon. So I've got Prime, and it's called The Man in the High Castle, and it's about what would happen if the Second World War, the Allies hadn't won, and it was Japan and Germany that had won, and it divided America up. And it's based in 1962, and they're totally bereft of culture. It looks like it's in the 1940s, but it's meant to be the 1960s. And then you see a sort of glimpse of the future, what it could be if the Allies had won. You see all this culture. It's bright, it's loud, and just, yeah. So by if they had have won, they would have clamped down on culture. There would have been no rock and roll. There would have been nothing would have happened. So yeah, so culture I think is undervalued, and capitalism is overvalued. Because companies crash all the time.
I was just gonna say there, dude. Like, this is why, maybe not, culture. To me, the value of culture, and I think I said to you before we went live, is that let's boil it down to its purest form, man. To quote the old grave diggers, man. It's down to its purest form, man. But the purest form of it is all the time we got human beings creating art, being creative, talking. They're not on battlefields, man. And that, to me, is a victory, because every time we get people that are discussing, reading, talking to, I don't care. I don't mind people standing over a table screaming at each other. Then it's when they break that universal thing about they start to hurt other human beings. That's the problem. And all the time that we got culture going on, that's the purest form of it. From that, other things flourish. And I think one of the things that you spoke upon Bitcoin, and I think this is. I think I have to sort of reflect back to you from the rabbit hole I've been down, and it's interesting to hear what you said about that, because I think most people think about Bitcoin and then that's about it. It's a fleeting glance, and it's almost strange because the revolutionary or the disruptive parts of the whole Bitcoin thing has really got nothing to do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just a cryptocurrency, and that's just basically, and this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you now, if you just look behind you, there's a wave coming that cryptocurrency is going to wipe everything. People are going to, this is what I'm saying. This is what I was trying to say to you with seeds. You're going to be around. Everybody is going to have, right now, can have their own currency. Everybody can have their own float. So this is already coming. But one of the things the disruptive things that people haven't sussed about Bitcoin is it's built on a process called blockchain, which is a decentralized network, and that, as it is now, and it's going on right now, and it's all very quiet and all under the water, and it's just going to, at some point, it's going to break through. But what it's doing is it gives everybody the ability to document everything. Now, that you think, well, what's so revolutionary about that? Now, imagine if everything that the government did, every penny, everything was put down on a public ledger, and there was no more of doing that. Now, how revolutionary is that, my friend? Just that one thing alone is so disruptive that this is creeping everywhere. And that's why every day I see my Twitter is full of people, like Argentinian bank taking it on. And I'm like, that doesn't surprise me. But they don't realize, this is the great thing about it, they're being seduced by, we can make some quick money. But they don't realize what they're letting in, because they're letting in that whole of being accountable. And it's great. I love watching it when I see all these banks going for it. And great, let them all bring it on. I want the governments to bring it all be on the blockchain, because once you're on that public record, that's there for as long as it's there for, man. And what's really disruptive about this is well, to put it this way, I've gone down that rabbit hole, and they would say to crack the blockchain, to undo what's on it, you'd have to have all the supercomputings in the world, and it would literally cost trillions. So that's the whole point, and let alone what's coming soon. And I don't want to speak about these two things. I think, but there's some technology coming soon, decentralized technology, that is basically unhackable, and that's going to unleash a whole different wave. So what I'm saying, there's two big waves coming, and this stuff, this is what I'm saying. So all this talk about getting depressed about Mr. Orange Skin over there or Mr. Shouty Voice over there, it's not important. It's kind of like literally sitting around 100 years ago having arguments about, horse and carts and all this, that, and the other, and people saying, do you know there's cars coming, and then there's going to be planes coming, and the future's coming, and you better watch it. And this is what I'm trying to say to people, because it's always creatives that can shape this. And what I love about right now is all this is being shaped by people like me and like you, not some suit, because they don't know about this, dude. They don't know about it. So great, right now we've got a golden opportunity. And not only is it a golden opportunity to shape the future, it's one that I would argue that countless people have died to give us that, the very ability where we've got this, and we can do it. And equally, if we don't, they will step in, and the future will judge us and go, what did you do? What did you do when you had the golden opportunity with all those tools on your hands, and you just sat there and sung songs about girls and big tits? Come on, man, let's be real.
Yeah. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I can't fault anything there. I've heard about what's coming. I don't like to talk about it too much. But yes, I think when you start underestimating people, I think that's when you're vulnerable, and they underestimate us. All the powers that be, all the people in quote unquote suits, they underestimate us, and there is a wave coming, and they're going to be very surprised. And so when people are held accountable to everything that they do, I mean, if you remember in the UK, the expenses scandal, that's going to be not just the expenses scandal, it'll be just everything that they do. Mm-hmm. That's just one thing that was exposed. It's going to be everything that's going to be out there for public. So there's nothing more transparent or holds you more accountable than that. And I think that's a great thing. It's a great thing. And like, then we need to push that agenda. People like me and you, creatives and other like-minded people, not anybody in a suit, Mr. Finance, who benefits very nicely from capitalism. So yes, I do believe that just as we talked about the music element, that eventually prog rock ate itself, just like all these other music forms eventually ate themselves. Disco, I think that capitalism is eating itself at an astronomical rate, and it's a lot of it is based on finite resources. I mean, when you think about oil, think about all this kind of stuff. It's a finite resource. Like what? When they run out of it, it's gone. That's it. Done. Dusted. Wait another million to 10 billion years, whatever, for some more fossils. But that's it. That's your lot. Unless you've got some synthetic stuff going on.
But dude, isn't it more than that? Isn't it more the fact that we're in 2016, and the quickest way to me to get to the States is to get in a metal tin can that's basically with some dinosaur juice on fire? I mean, what the fuck, man? I didn't expect this shit, man. If you talked to me in the 80s, I wanted to do this kind of like telepathically and be able to fly across America. I can't, man. That's what I'm saying. We need to really wake up and realize we've got so much potential that we're not unleashing. We don't need to fucking argue over resources, because this planet it's got all the things that we require.
Yeah.
Realize that, and instead of this all, like you say, the problem is, man, and this is what really is what I think the real awakening needs to happen, is people need to understand that they don't need to turn their powers and the greatest gift they've been given to someone else, because that always centralizes power, and power goes after power, and power goes after power, and it never stops. And those who want more and more control, basically, they're all the same, man. All of them. This is why it's the old Bill Hicks line, man. You just put them in the back of a room. The corporations, the government, and all that. They sit there with a big cigar and they go, right. And I know it's a joke, but and this is what I'm saying. Just think of the numbers, man. There's 60. In the UK, there's 66 million of us. There's 300 little people in Parliament, and then we all sit there and whinge and complain. And you think, well, we could just all walk away. We don't need them. We don't need them, man.
Exactly. There's a lot of I call them bedroom politicians who go on to take to social media to talk about the injustices of what next cut has been made. But if you don't get out there and actually do something about it, nothing's ever going to change. Like you said, for you and for me in the pipeline, it's all about social change, because then something needs to give. I mean, the system that everything's founded on currently is corrupt. It's unfair, it's unjust, it's unethical, everything. And we're just sitting back, and usual 95% of people sit there and talk about it, but they're just observers. No, there's no point being an observer. We can all observe, but nothing ever got achieved. Like when people created a light bulb, it was people in America say it's Edison, but I think it was Joseph Swan, and because he's from where I'm from. My neck of the woods, but they didn't sit back and watch someone else do it. They wanted to do it, just electricity, light bulbs, everything, just everything that we take for granted now. Somebody had to do it, but now we just sort of we're passive. We've been sort of primed to just be zombified, and reality TV perpetuates this as well. We just sit there and just talk. And Gogglebox, we now watch other people watching TV, and obviously that girl just won. Just won. That I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. But she's a nice girl. But at the end of the day, she's famous for watching TV. It's mind-boggling. So just basically, instead of talking about things, get out in the grassroots and start doing something. Like I know you are, like I am, and like we need to all collectively come together as well. Drop all the egos, and just realize how this is. I mean, it's. I can't believe the millennium was 16 years ago, and things have got worse since the millennium. It's crazy. 21st century. And we're still talking about men in suits running things, and they should have been over. There should have been an upheaval years ago, and they should have been all taken out, and we should be running the show, creators. But we just didn't have the platform. Like you said, you've been waiting for technology to catch up, but who wants to be told what to do? Who wants to be told how what they're entitled to and all this kind of stuff? Like, no, we should make our own rules. Like it often doesn't even feel like a democracy. It feels like an autocracy. It feels like this is one person just generally like a puppet with the people making the decisions behind them, and we're told what to do. We get a vote every 5 years, 4 years in America, but you get given the candidates. You get the candidates are presented by the parties. We don't pick the candidates, so we've got to pick the lesser of several evils. By even if you vote, I don't want to vote for any of them. The truth be told, I don't want to vote for any politician. I don't like any politician, really, because I know they're liars and they're just puppets. So we need to really fucking get to grips with what's going on, seriously, because a guy with no fucking political experience Not that even counts for anything, because I don't even know what political experience is. Or Hillary's got a lot more political experience than Trump. What's that? She's got more experience of sticking knives into backs. Well, he's got a lot of that in the private world, private sector. So I'm just sick of people who think who claim to represent other people, but they don't. They don't have your interest at heart, and they can't. There's no empathy, because how could a multi-millionaire empathize with someone who's disabled? They can't, or whatever else, So we need to wider the music. This is much wider than music. This is like my dream, and it's a realistic dream, would be to overhaul everything.
Yeah, and that's what
complete upheaval.
This is what I'm trying to say, man. This is what I was trying to allude to earlier on, that we right now are in a very fortunate position, and I'm telling you, it's not going to be that far in the future that the future will sit there and judge us on what decisions we make right now, because it's kind of like, put it this way, we've got the Gutenberg press at our fingertips. Now, when he did that, he didn't think, as you know, he was just thinking, okay, I was going to get a bit of information. Look what that did. It broke all the Catholic Church. It broke all the structures down. And this is where we're at right now. And that's what I'm saying. If we just sit back and do nothing, hey, I know what will happen. They will put this to their powers. They will just do, if we, like you say, if people turn away. People turning away is what's going on in Europe now. This is what scares me, man. It's good I'm talking to someone in Europe, because I usually talk to people in America and they never understand it. I'm like, but this has all happened, and I'll be real about this, man. Let's have a real conversation. Fascism rising back up in Europe is because of the left. They've sat there for 20 years and done nothing, and everybody's just got pandered and rich and this, what I'm trying to say is, well, you're right. There's as much as there's a carrot in the room, there's a big stick, and the only way we're going to get away from that stick, and it's like you were speaking upon, is when we all understand that we don't need, as you said, we've all got that power in ourselves, and we've got that, and if we just connect people and we just make people understand that, as you said, man. Let's be real. Life itself is one big battle, man, and we are warriors. And this is why I'm not talking about some social justice bollocks, warrior bollocks. I'm talking about, as creative people, we fight that battle every day, man. And, and do you know when people say to me, "Oh, you're being over dramatic"? I'm not being over dramatic. Do you know why I'm not? Because this is a conversation that should be going on the BBC tonight. It should be going on ITV. It should be going on Channel 5. And why isn't it? Why have they got their shit on? And until that happens, dude, we know we're in a battle. And if the soldiers in the battle don't turn up and just want to sit there and put their heads between their ass and go, "Oh, well, I'll leave it to somebody else," we get what we've had for 30 years, man, and we go back to where we started this conversation.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's just passively sitting there, "Oh, war is me, war is me, war is me." Well, unless you do something about it, then nothing's going to get. They're not going to make it better for us. They in inverted commas. So if they don't do anything about it for us, we've got to do it ourselves.
Yep, and do you know what gets me, man? I think you just said upon it, the people that say, "Woe is me, woe is me, woe is me." Let's be real, man. If you're living in America or you're living in the UK, you're in that 1%. You don't hear that. I've lived in South America. I lived in Venezuela amongst people who had shit.
Yeah.
And they didn't complain. They weren't going, "Woe is me." They had smiles on their faces, and they were living through some of the most oppressive governments. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. There was none of that "woe is me" shit, and that's what makes me laugh. And I hear people go, I'm like, dude, you don't realize how lucky you are. You're not living under a threat of a gun every day of your life, man.
Exactly.
Instead of "woe is me," think, "Whoa, woe is me! Wow, look at what I can do! Shit, man, I can inspire.
Yeah.
I could go out. And do you know any proof of it, man? This conversation. Me and you haven't met, but we've met through the same tools that's being used by all the trolls. And the only reason this happens is because when people like me and you step up, we do find each other. But if you're not going to step up, how am I going to find you? If I don't step up, how are you going to find me?
Exactly. And then we take further dialogue elsewhere where they can't monitor us and try to stop the conversational flow, which they will do at some point. If we continue being, proactive, they would find something to stop to halt the conversation. Because if you don't think that you're being monitored, then just take a look at Facebook. Everything's catered to your everything, like everything that you like. abide. So yeah, so we're followed and everything. So we need a place like to come together where we're not followed, we're not scrutinized. We have pure freedom of speech, and where we can build and eventually be strong enough, and people grow some balls instead of just being defeatist, and be thankful for what they've got, but also strive to have more. But more in the way, not in terms of freedom of speech, because I mean, Americans value their freedom of speech so greatly. It's in their amendment, as much as they like shooting people with their right to bear arms, which I think is the biggest ridiculous. I mean, people used to shoot bears and Native Americans in the 1780s. It's not relevant. But I might get a lot of flack for that, but I don't really care. I couldn't give a shit. But the fact is that the freedom of speech is paramount to Americans and to ourselves. We don't have a constitution written down, actually, but but they will only allow your freedom of speech to go so far. You need to be a threat, which they have historically seen various characters in the past be a threat. Where do they end up? Like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, John Lennon. Anyone preaching an anti-war, when there's war going on, and preaching about peace, they're not dead. Or even Malcolm X, who spoke about civil rights and about oppression. And there's always some crazy who decides to shoot them. I would question whether there's always some crazy, or whether someone's been employed by the CIA to go and do that for them. So yeah, so all conspiracy theories, etc., etc. But yes, we have some freedom of speech. We're not living in North Korea. I'm not saying we are, but we are restricted. They do watch us. Yeah. So we are still vetted. There's people who have been sacked by speaking out on social media about things, and for their maybe slightly right wing or left wing views, and the bosses have seen them and sacked them, even by people close to us. So yeah.
That's what I'm saying, man. The revolution starts in your head, man, because everything is going. Do you know what the tactic is, dude? And do you know what I mean? And I've listened to many people, and they always they allude it to being like some great beast that we're fighting. It's not. It's a very elusive little demon, this thing, because it comes along to you, it gives you a little push, and you react to it, then it walks away. Then you forget about it, and it comes out. And before you know it, you're like, hey, I'm a mile down the path from where I ever thought I was going to be. And that's because people aren't standing up, man. And this is the point we keep repeating. Because if we don't stand up and we don't talk about things, then what's the point of living? Forget all the politics and that. What's the point of us being on this planet, man? If I can't sit there and express myself and feel I can, I like you said, dude, I don't care whether you're going to like what I say or anybody likes what I say. Yeah. But if I can't have the right to do that, and if I can't have the right just to be myself, beyond all the politics, just to live my life without being under threat and living my life to the fullest, and then not only is that just a basis to me, just imagine what we could do if we could unleash all that potential of humans. It would be... Dude, this is what I'm saying. This is what I keep repeating back, and this is why this very point in time in history, we're at a very fortunate time, because 20 years ago it wasn't possible. 20 years down the line, it's going to be a different world. We live in a very small little edge. Saying, and that's why I'm saying to creators, jump on board, man. You've got the ability to, like never before. This wave's coming, and you can surf it, and you can shape the world. But But as you said right at the beginning of this, man, you can't just expect to make a hip hop album if you're just going to turn up with a sound beat. You can't just expect to be a good human being if you're just going to do nothing and just turn up. You've got to put the work in, man. And it's what you're talking about. Whether it's music, art, all about look, and it's not for fame. And this is the thing, man. It's not about doing that because it's like, oh, that's the way to get your money and all that. It's doing it for yourself. Because when it comes down to it, man, we're all going to get one day that last breath, and you're going to look back and go, shit, you only regret what you don't do, man.
It's one of those things where, I mean, speaking of Chuck D and the like, he actually called me a legend. I'm like, Chuck, You calling me a legend? Look at you, because legends put in work and you put in the work. So to Chuck D's ideology, a legend is someone who puts in the work necessary. And too many people want that instant fame or glory or whatever they're seeking these days, and they're not, like you said, they're not putting in the work. And if we had a group of people who strive and are prepared to work even for free to make this happen, because we need a platform. I mean, like you said, very, very wisely, 20 years ago, a platform didn't exist because the technology wasn't there. In 20 years' time, they'll have shut our shit completely down. It'll be the internet's getting increasingly privatized anyway. When Tim Berners-Lee created the internet, he didn't copyright it or anything. He just gave it away to the world. He would be the wealthiest man 1 billion times over. But he didn't. There's no ownership of the internet. But treat people slowly through our friends Google and etc. and Apple. They're trying to own it. They're trying to market it and corner it. And so we need to really keep this like you said. I think 20 years time is going to be too late. 20 years ago was too soon. Now and for the next 5 to 10 years is prime time. Like, get the fuck out there, make it happen, connect, voice. The strength in numbers. I can't even say that enough. There's no good just a few disparate people. Oh yeah, whatever. They're just loons, whatever. But if everyone gets together and speaks very openly and won't just bow down to what the government. People historically throughout the centuries have toppled governments and royalty. Like France got rid of their royal family. Russia got rid of their royal family. I'm not a royalist by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're tax leeches. That's my. They are. They say, they're bringing tourism. Well, sorry, when the Queen's gone, the castle's still going to be there. You don't have a meet and greet with the Queen when you come to the fucking castle. It's still going to be there. So no, I don't believe giving tax to them is anything that is.
Dude, can I just say I've got one word answer to the royal family: privatization.
Yeah.
Let them go off and become man. This is the point. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I hear the same shit, and I'm not going to get into that whole argument. But yeah, I kind of feel, and I thought, okay, yeah, I've lived around the world to know there's enough dopey Americans or Canadians who want to come across and see that. Hey, I can get to see Prince Charles and all that bollocks. But the thing is, why do they need our money? Let them go off and do their own trade. They would be a very phenomenal, formerly successful business. That's the point. This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think just look at everything, man. What they don't realise, what the point I'm trying to make is, man, whether it's the royal family, I don't care, it's the government, none of them realise, and I'm not sitting here sort of saying that I'm I'm some sort of vision seer or anything, but man, the disruption that is going on right now is going to change everything, and that's what I love about it. These lot don't realize they're still trying to go out there and distract us all and make us argue about this thing and that, and put talk shows on and make us all argue about debate for the day and dogs and bite and all that bollocks. Oh great, they played that little trick for 30 years, but they don't realize, and all the time they're doing that, to me, I'm like, great, you go and distract yourself over there, people. Let the creatives, us, you, and all them lot, and like you said, because that's what I'm trying to say, man. As hip hop rose from the streets of New York, and now every little kid I lived in Argentina. Every little 5-year-old knows rap. It's everywhere, but that started from the streets. But again, what was the inspiring thing from that? It started from a few people in the streets, and bang, went out. You mentioned earlier on about, bands like Maiden over here started in little pubs over in London, and bang, next thing you know, they formed the whole system in the world. This is what I'm saying. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
It's been done before, man. And all we've got to do is, like you said, we've got to step up as men, man. And I don't mean that in a male sort of thing. We've got to step up as humans. Maybe that's a real way of doing it. We've got to step up rather than just sitting back and being, couch potatoes and watching life go by, man. Because one thing happens, dude, as you can speak upon, I can speak upon, before you know it, 20 years go past and you're like, what the fuck happened there? That's what people need to remember when they're in their 20s, man. It goes like that.
It does. The greatest threat, I would say, to our creations and stuff, and our freedom of speech is apathy. So when you have apathy, that means you just like, whatever, shrug your shoulders and just get on with it. So yeah, whatever, all politicians are dicks. Yes, they are, but do something about it. If you think all politicians are dicks, then connect with like-minded people and start momentum going. Like you said, very well said. Hip hop literally spawned from a house party, and it took over the entire world. Now there's people rapping in Hungarian, in everything, in Indian, and it's Australia. It's massive in Australia. It's massive in Japan. Huge, absolutely colossal. So it just shows that one thing that give people that freedom of speech is so powerful. And unfortunately, the suits got involved, and I'm sure a government have got involved. Well, they have interfered in the 90s, and they've just sort of almost served us up with a group of zombies who won't ignite that fire in people who need that fire ignited. So the likes of Kendrick Lamar may, but the likes of there's lots of people like Lil Wayne or Lil Yachty and all this kind of stuff. People glorify drug taking and just drinking fucking cough syrup. They call it scissor. I don't know if you know much about that, but they put cough syrup, lemonade, and a Jolly Rancher in the top, and then they drink all that shit. And they just walk around like literally zombies. And so that's what has been perpetuated by the radio in New York, even the mecca of hip hop, the birthplace of hip hop. And so you've got people who are parodies, and it's sad. It's sad that in the revolutionaries, the people who they're just pushed to the side or demonized, the one thing that connects everybody in this world with hip hop is the freedom of speech, is the ability to put your thoughts to music. And that was the initial, that's why I've spawned worldwide. But now, unfortunately, they've fought back, and it's very subtle how they've done it. And it's been over the period of like 20 years and more, 20 plus years. But they've got us back where they want us in the mainstream. No one's saying no one's painting the picture. No one's telling narratives. No one's speaking on real world politics. So no one's deemed a threat to them. So yeah, so the freedom of speech isn't there the way it used to be. And so yeah, so if hip hop could take over the world, why can't we form a coalition, for want of a better word, and just take over the world again? But in terms of just music, everything, it's strength in numbers. It's strength in numbers.
Yeah. Man, I think the other thing that's, again, it's a yin yang. Let's talk about the other side of things, because I mean, I don't want us to sort of be too doomtastic in that sense. But man, this is one of the things. I mean, one of the things that many, and I'm sure you have the same, and you'll probably had it more than me. But many people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I love what you do and all that." I'm like, well, you can all do this, but a lot of the great things that people who don't do this, the suits, if I want a better word, what they love about what we do is the enjoyment. I'm sure it's the same for you. I love everything I do, and there's an enjoyment about being creative. It's the ultimate freedom, because there's no one there's no one between me and my creativity. I haven't got someone stood over me. I'm just being. So this sort of rounds it up to you. The question I really want to kind of ask you is, when you're obviously a producer, and we can't, So for instance, on a lot of the tracks. Tell me some of the actual technical process of doing that. So, for instance, you get an organ sample. Is that you actually play the organ, or do you go and sample that? And I mean, tell me about some of the actual sort of technical process of making those beats.
Generally, I mean, like, yes, I will use synth sometimes, but generally, I'm known for taking something old, sampling, and making it and just completely rehashing it and making it into something completely different, to the extent where you can't tell where the original has came from, and you know, and layering it with different sources. And actually, there was a French term called bricolage, and basically that was about layering things on top of things on top of things. And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that in hip hop production, where you take disparate sources and you try to make it so you take the HOLE, so it's the whole, and make it WHOLE into a whole. So yeah, so basically, I'm pretty sample heavy. Yeah, I'm pretty sample heavy, and I do like, because to me, when you're taking it from real musicians, and I say real musicians with the greatest respect to hip hop producers or people who make hip hop, but real musicians who can actually play instruments. Like my dad is a drummer for years, and you know, I can play drums to a certain level, but I admire people who have spent years learning how to play instruments, and just just taking things from them and just reworking it into something completely different is what started hip hop. People didn't have instruments, so they started taking when the art of sampling started in the mid to late 80s, is they started taking little elements from different records and putting it all together. And if you listen to, like we talked about Public Enemy, they had at sometimes 20 to 30 samples within just one track. Just like a screech here, or like just like the like you said, an organ sample there or whatever, and just a mash of everything together. And so yeah, my personal ideology is I like to dust off the records and hear what's on there and go for really weird sources and say and almost test myself by finding like strange sounding things. But no matter if I'm listening to like an LP like from like the 70s or whatever, 60s, and there'll be like a 5-second thing, and then my ears just prick up immediately. That could be used. So I'm not going to sit here and play like all my own instruments, because that would be a lie. I don't. But I get people to play instruments for me. On Hastility, we had a live bassist who I got in on Substance, or was it? No, hold on. Which one was it? Yeah, Substance Abuse. The track Substance Abuse. That was a live bassist on that. I think because people were saying put some drums in it, and I wanted it really stripped down and minimalistic, and then I needed some bass, and I didn't want to program the bass, because I can program sounds, you know, bass and drums, I do it all the time. But the fact is that I wanted real bass, plucked strings, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, so I do have live instrumentation as well, but it's mainly already recorded, mainly, not all the time, mainly.
And again, just to focus on the technical aspects, I mean, what platform do you use? I mean, are you using like Logic, or do you use OBS? I mean, what's your kind of, how do you, what you know, or Audacity, or I mean, what kind of, or again, what would you recommend? Because I've when I record stuff, I tend to use Audacity, because it's just a free one, like it's an open source. So I find it quite good for my needs. Is there a particular one that you like to work on?
You see, I used to make the mistake, and this is a classic example of someone who didn't know quite what he was doing. I used to buy the newest of everything all the time. And somebody once said, just because you've got a pair of Jordans doesn't mean you can slam dunk. So it's not always what you know. This is what I'm sure this is what women tell men who are lacking in the trouser department all the time. But you know, it's not what you do; it's how you use it. It's not what you got; it's how you use it. So I have basically I got rid of a lot of stuff, and I've stripped myself down. And there's a producer called Apollo Brown, who's one of the guys that I think is hot shit. He's amazing. All the stuff he does is amazing, and he uses like this really crummy, old, ancient 20-year-old program called Cool Edit, and I still mess with Cool Edit, but I've also got an MPC. I've also got I did have a machine for a bit. I'm gonna get another one, but the fact is that nobody. This is the thing I'm going to tell you. Between using very expensive equipment and going into very big studios, nobody could tell the difference when I did that or when I just used a random laptop with some fucking really old software, and seemingly nobody could tell the difference. I'm like, oh wow, so nobody's picking out that track as being better produced than that track. Okay, wow, I've got it made. It's like, yeah. So I've been to like Metropolis Studios in London several times, the biggest studio in Europe. Book studio time there. They've got everything, everything you can think of, every platform, every piece of beat equipment, every instrument you can think of. I mean, like, they've got Freddie Mercury's piano as well. Oddly, you can't use that, obviously. And the recording booth where Amy Winehouse recorded Back to Black. It's got a lot of history there. Their own bar and everything. It's just otherworldly. Great studio. However, I made a few beats there, and then I came back and I was traveling and used my laptop. I made a few beats on the laptop, and nobody could tell the difference between what I'd spent on the big studio and what I'd spent on just for my laptop. So, to be honest with you, I'm not going to tell anyone that there's a definitive way to make really hot beats, because I've heard some really hot beats in like there's a guy who, I'm not going to mention my name because we don't really see eye to eye, but he uses like he used to use Fruity Loops, which is like free down basic, really basic stuff, and he won a Grammy using Fruity Loops. This is what I'm saying. And then he eventually got a machine, and that's MASCHINE. It's a brand. So there is the answer is there is no right way. There is just if you have an ear for music, you're already 75% of the way there. Because I've used everything. I've used the machine. I've used an MPC. I've used just everything, every computer program you can name of just oh my god, it just goes on. I mean, just and then even like the old stuff like Acid. I remember I started on Acid Pro and all this stuff, the sequence, and it's still decent at sequencing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I wanted to be the biggest and best and have the latest and best. But you know what? It's like keeping up with the Joneses. You show off for a bit, and then you realize that, I've just spent like £1,000 on this, and what I was doing before sounds much the same. So yeah. So that's your question.
Well, cool.
I use a combination.
No, cool. I was just going to say, man. So while we're on this subject, I mean, you've obviously released, Hastility in as a CD. So that's quite in a day of age, stuff. I mean, that's quite important to you. Now, the supplementary question I was going to ask you, particularly where you're based, I know, well, where you came from, Newcastle way.
Yeah.
I've had contacts with, they're called Frux tapes, and they're all about doing cassettes again, and that's been now they're doing it for a year, and they've got a little shop in Durham, and it's and I know like. I mentioned the Seeding Demons to you, and other bands they're starting to push this whole cassette thing. So I wonder if that's something you sort of ever sort of thought of getting back into doing the old cassette one.
Definitely, I absolutely love tapes. I've still got all my tapes from mixtapes and even recorded, the pause and play thing back in the day when you would like get rid of the DJ's voice. I absolutely love tapes. I used to host my own radio shows on tapes, and then I even made my own like music on tapes and used to distribute them out and stuff and make a few pound here and there. So if tapes ever properly came back, apart from just hipsters, I don't know there's hipsters, but even vinyl's made a resurgence. But it can be sort of cost prohibitive putting out vinyl because it costs a lot of money to produce. But tapes, oh god, cheap as anything. So CDs were sort of I dipped my toe in the water with CDs. But definitely it was I sold out of it. But the fact is that there's definitely a renaissance with tapes and vinyl, and that's weird in this era where it's almost like everything's streaming, and all of a sudden tapes are starting to become trendy, vinyl's starting to become trendy. So I think it's when you start wearing clothes in the 60s and 70s, and then all of a sudden that fashion dies out or whatever. and then it starts coming, mini skirts come back around, and I think there's only so many things you can have, and then eventually culture ends up repeating itself again, and it's that kind of when women like a lot of times now we're wearing stuff that my mum was wearing 40 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's kind of strange how culture does repeat itself, and I would hope the same would be true of music. The music that we love, that can be repeated as well, that we can speak and people will listen to us. They don't just want to be in a club, like you said, watching women shaking asses and in buying drinks and talking about drugs, but talking about real world stuff and uninhibited. Yeah, because I don't hear anywhere near enough. I mean, Kendrick Lamar is good. I wouldn't say he's great. Some people say he's like top 10 of all time, and he's not. But the fact is that he's one of the few notable people that is actually making a conscious effort to make so-called conscious music. And to be honest with you, that's quite weird to me that I get lauded for making real hip hop music. I get lauded for consciousness in the lyrics. And to be honest with you, it's like, what the fuck else am I gonna do? Like, you know, this is the music I love. This is the music I grew up with. This is the music that I like producing. This is the kind of rap that I like, and I used to rap myself. I mentioned before, and so yeah, I cannot listen to this other nonsense like trap or grime. I just can't listen to it. It's so far off my radar. Somebody's got to be saying something, or my grey matter just melts. So
yeah, man. Yeah. I have to sort of say, for someone who's, you know, never done a rap tune in my life, never done any producing in my life, never been in that kind of area, and you know, I be honestly, from my outside perspective, I think it's all part of the process. I don't separate you from the guy who writes the lyrics or the guy who raps it out, because I think, and that's what I was trying to sort of say to you earlier on before we went live. I mean, that's what I found. I said to you, I've been waiting 20 years to hear just some of these, you know, just some of the beats you were coming up with. Like, this is, you know, this has been, I've been waiting so long because I'm saying, so it's all part of it. And I'm saying I could take all the lyrics or the rap away from, you know, from your beats, and it wouldn't mean the same. And if I spoke to, you know, it's all part of the, and this is, again, it's all yeah, of course you can, dude. Plug in.
That leads so well into something that is brewing. But I'm going to be releasing a series of instrumental albums with no voices over the top of it, so you can hear my beats as they are meant to be.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah. Wait, so that bled into the next question I was going to say. I was about to ask you what's up. What, you know, what's up for you next? What's the next sort of projects on your horizon?
Instrumental album. Could be early as January. It depends on if things go according to plan. I might be with the right people who are, let's say, very deep in the game. And yeah, I don't like to count my blessings, but yeah, hopefully something that can come up. It's been on it. There's been debate for a long time about me working with certain people, and but yeah, regardless, irrespective of anything, it's going to be instrumental based. And people have been asking me for so long, put out your beats, put beats out, and yeah, I don't really want to brag too much, but I keep getting told that anybody can sound good on your beats, because the first thing, and I will say this with confidence, but the first thing you listen to when you hear any music, not just even hip hop, but you listen to the beat strikes, the instrumentation strikes you first. And for the first like 2 or 3 listens, then you start listening to the lyrics. If you like the track, because I can't listen to lyrics if I don't like the actual underlying music. So it's like where I always say where like the producers like the canvas of the music, and then the rapper will like splash on a bit of color on top. Kind of good to go. So yeah, but they can't, if they didn't have us, it would just be like spoken word and just really empty sounding. We can put out stuff without them very easily. So yeah, I don't need anybody. I like to have people rap on my stuff, but it's getting to a stage where I want to hear what people think of just the stripped down beats because without any voices on top of it. Yeah, I want to test that. Yep.
Now, you mentioned this. I'm definitely going to hammer you on this one. I'm going to sort of really focus on this one. You said you're going to put you're working on putting an instrumental album. Now, I want to have to ask you, will any point of this process, do you design it to be listened to as a straight album from track 1 to track 10? I mentioned this because I'm back in the old school days, and I could name you albums, and I know what track comes where, and intrinsically now I won't go back, and I don't want to listen to like one track of it. I'll be like, if I haven't heard. Put it this way, I hadn't heard Paris Grave Diggers. I put it the other day. I thought I hadn't heard that for a while. I didn't listen to one track. I wanted to put the whole album on because I know they spent a long time arcing that album out, putting it all out. That's what I'm saying. What you've been speaking about tonight, because it was a love, because they were putting a CD out rather than just putting a few beats out and bunging them out on social media. So my question to you is, with that in mind, are you designing your album with that in mind, or are you just going to put a collection of songs together? And I mean, is that something you think about, the arc of the album or how it's structured?
Yeah, there's a definite ongoing narrative and a definite theme. It's not by chance that even the track listing is the way it is. That's by design, and that songs have been placed in it skits, like little segments, tiny segments of talking have been placed where they are. So historically, all throughout my time, going way back to 16 years when I started releasing paid for music, there's always been thought processes to the theme, to the arc of the songs, and there's very much like a book. There's a start and a middle and an end, and that's what I like. I like it to be cohesive. I don't like it to be all just I like it just a round pack full of just randomness. No, I like particularly the last 3 that I've put out it's been a definite theme. Probably Hastility H1 has been definitely the most politicized that I've been for a while. With a very, very, very obvious theme, but all the other stuff has had a theme as well. Yeah. So it's not by chance; it's by design, 100%.
Well, perfect, dude. Look, I've just realised we're about to do. We really hit the 2-hour mark, man, and there's. I know, man. Like all good conversations, I'm left with so many questions and kind of feel like I want to go and talk to you more about it, man. But dude, I want to, before we do wrap this up, there's a couple of things I really want to sort of check. First of all, if people are listening to this or watching this, where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Oh well, basically Google my name. I know it sounds a bit brash, but like Configa, and I'm on Twitter @Configa, on Facebook @Configa, Configa.com. So yeah, I'm not hard to find. It's like I'm basically I've been able to streamline my social media and everything, so it's basically just my name, Configa, Configa. Yeah, it's not really that difficult.
Well, perfect, man. Like I told you before, I mean, and I'll give you a bit of an insight, and I've told you some private messages, but I love to paint and I love to draw, and particularly listen to one track, and I love to listen to one track over and over and over again. I don't know what it is about me, but when I'm in that mode, I just play one track over, and I've had Soldiers March on every day, just constantly, just going round and round. Now, okay, maybe it's another conversation. I want to sit down with the guy who wrote the lyrics, because that's another conversation. But from your perspective, who's done the producing of it, man, while I'm queuing this up and while I'm getting all this ready, man, just tell us a bit about the whole setting for that, because, dude, I mean, it's a powerful thing, man, and again, it's the whole setup for it. And again, how maybe my particular question to you over that track is, how much of the pre-intro bit, when there's I'm Dan Rapper, how much of that was in your control? Was that you, or was that part of the collaboration?
That was a mutual friend that we drafted in to do that for the bit. He's a rapper. He is really a rapper, but he actually sings on This World. A guy called Rashawn. He's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Awesome guy. But the thing is that Earl Blaze, the engineer is responsible for a lot of that because he mixes. He's mixed my last 3 things. I used to mix everything, but he's an amazing engineer, sound engineer, and so he makes the sound effects sound amazing and just it blends in. But the actual resonance of the song, the reason it was me that came up with that beat. I came up with the concept of the marching drums, the stomping feet. So I used to do this a lot with the band that I was with 10 years ago called Slept On Fam. Basically, if they couldn't think of a concept, I'd go away, just mess about with some things, and then sample a vocal to put in the chorus, and because of that vocal in the chorus, it would give them inspiration to write the track, or maybe the mood of the song would give them inspiration to write the track when they couldn't think of anything to write about. So I've been definitely instrumental, pardon the pun, in that, particularly that track. That track was produced a while ago, and it wasn't produced for the person who rapped on it. So I had that concept in my mind of war, and even World War Rap, which you played at the start. I thought that the album was lacking a bit of oomph, so I wanted to take it to heavy metal. So again, my call, I wanted it just rough, rugged, based on rock, and that's what we got. So it's kind of I've been on both sides of the fence as someone who used to rap. It's a lot easier to write 16 lines, or bars as we call them, than it is to make a beat. And when you get inspired by someone's instrumentation, then the words just flow. I've had it happen to me before, and I've written to my own stuff before. So yeah, I mean, everything was already there. And obviously it's about war. I told him it's about war. This beat is about war. So he just sort of capitalized on what was already there on that track, for sure.
Well, look, perfect, man. Like I said, we nearly hit the 2-hour mark, and like I say, it's been an absolute an insightful conversation, dude. And I am honestly left with so many questions, and I definitely want to get you back on here again, because
I'd love to.
Maybe one to definitely talk about the new instrumental album. And dude, I can't believe I've done 2 hours and we haven't even spoken about the PhD side of it. So there's a whole philosophy side, man. That's a whole different show, man. Where we can sit and talk philosophy. So that's another one. But man, it's been. But man, I want to thank you for giving me the time tonight, because I know how precious your time is, man. So the fact that 2 hours has just flown by, man, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, man. Well, like I say, while I am queuing this up, man, and maybe sort of like, what would be your parting message to to anyone maybe listening to this tonight? So while I'm queuing this up, you just give your parting message, and we'll go out with Soldiers March.
Don't just exist. Actually strive to be heard. Don't be a follower, be a leader. I would say that's what I would like to say. Don't be a sheep. I wouldn't say be a wolf either, but don't just follow the herd, lead the herd. Absolutely. That's
okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Channel Zero, Third Eyewitness News. I'm reporting to you live from the front lines overseas, where there are thousands of men and women being slaughtered. Holy shit! They're shooting at us now. I repeat, they are shooting at us now. Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, some lie about what's going on. We are here to give you the truth. Want to come at 11 p.m. In the meantime, we go to Hostile for the war report. And that's a cut. Good. Get me the fuck out of here.
I'm on.
Right foot left,
left foot right. Soldiers stand up, fighting on the front line for a march into battle. No time for second guessing in the middle of the battle when the enemy is fighting. Line up in rows, G.I. Joe's, a camouflage, brainwash, working for D.C. Leading soldiers with the cadence into overseas chaos. Casualties add up. The U.S. gets paid off, troops getting limbs blown off. I'm praying my cousin return from Iraq with his limbs intact. They're dropping paratroopers right in the middle of combat for the land of the free, the home of the brave. No, it's the land of the master and the home of the slave. They forget about reparations and 40 acres, taking up papers like slot machines in Las Vegas. In the war zone, stepping over body parts forward. March, 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 march. Stepping over body parts forward. March, 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 march. March, 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 march. Right foot left, soldier right, soldier left, yeah. Let's go. I'm the Bruce Lee of this shit, every style master, direct lineage of bloodline of Christ's passion. How can I exist in this world of backstabbers? I use up chickens and bats like Black Sabbath. In this war with the world, so I'm marching, I'm drafted. Acid spitting out flakes of God's danger. Cancer cords and hands frozen with ice. Molten lava, I'm nice, please administer your last rites. Every Chino verse is like a lesson in math. Now you in the mix like Usher, homosexual ass in the flicks. You staring at the screen, I'm regarded as retarded and insane. Martyrdom, religious swimming through your veins like a virus. See the fear in your iris. Check you for your Jacob and leave you timeless. Einstein was one of my students in the past life. This time I use my genius to push white. Right to my hands, can't even grip a fucking pencil. You niggas sound the same like Little John instrumentals in the rental in the hood. Consider king, claiming you the next Chino Excel. You ain't even Chingo Blend. March, 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 march. Stepping over body parts forward. March, 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 march. March, 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 march. Right foot left, left foot right. Soldiers man up. Yo, it started off watching Channel Zero. A military commercial said you could be a hero if you sign up. Made a call, seen a recruiter who said call him Chuck. Passed a military test with a little bit of luck. Medical exam, piston in the cup. Got the basic training date. Once off the plane, hop on a bus. 20 of us ain't trained to camp for 3 months. Living in barricades, eating shit for lunch. See y'all spitting in your face and don't give a fuck. Calling us maggots until we graduate.
Crescendo.
Got to sign some Seen friendship overseas while I stayed in the States. Months later, we go to war. In combat, shipped off in the field, got my legs blown off. If I could do it all again, motherfucker, I would pick up a trade. Cause I'm in rehabilitation with prosthetic legs. Saying march, 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 march. Shit, I can't march, 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 march. March, 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 march. Right foot left, left, left foot right. Soldiers man up.
Fade out.